Hadi was frustrated that he lost the Olympia, right?
I got ill bad. I don't know if it was COVID or it was the flu, but I definitely got ill really bad.
Last year, Nick Walker didn't compete.
This is a mess, it's a real mess.
What is your strategy?
Just getting worse and worse and worse.
I want to ask you about 2024. So after the Olympia, you go to do Arnold Classic, back to back, right? You first US, then UK, and then Hadi jumps in it because I guess Hadi was frustrated. Hadi was frustrated that he lost the Olympia, right? So he goes in to compete against you, right? Obviously, he won that one, and then UK happens like 2 weeks later, I think, right?
Yeah.
And I think you got sick or so. Like, what happened in that span of between the first one and the second one?
So basically, people don't understand, like, when you're at this expos and you're doing this show and like the Olympia and the Arnold and everything else, you're around a lot. You're at the most, your body is pretty much as the most vulnerable that week, And in that week, you're doing a lot of things. You have a lot of appearances. You have a lot of stuff to do, not just the show. So you put your body through a lot, And when we kind of had that whole week at the Ohio, the first one, and all the expos and everything else, and you're in this point of it, and then you come off the show, basically, I felt I got ill bad, I got ill bad. I don't know if it was COVID or it was the flu, but I definitely got ill really bad. So when we were flying home, we just kind of looked at me and it was just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. I remember it was only 2 weeks between Ohio and UK.
2 weeks, yeah.
And it was such a point where towards the ending of that week, we were looking you're about to go into peak week. You haven't been able to train properly. You look so bad at this point because we're having to take antibiotics. And at this point, I was just blowing up looking horrible. And we were like, man, we generally have to start considering the idea of actually pulling out. Wow. And not actually coming to the show. And it was a point where we were just looking and going, this is a mess, it's a real mess. You're not in anywhere near, your body's just not responding to anything. We can't even deplete you or push you because you're in a state where you're literally ill and your antibiotics and everything else. We just can't afford to do that. So it was a case where we saw that and we thought, okay, should we pull out for it? Should we actually kind of let it go? And at the same time, you get a lot of stress. This one was the first time where you get a lot of stress, between the Arnold Ohio and Arnold UK, there was a lot of stress. At this point, you're performing at home. Your next show is literally here in the UK. There was a lot of just noise and everything else that was coming to you. And this time was the first time where you were feeling it full-heartedly. Normally I'm quite upbeat and just chilled and just enjoying the whole experience of everything about it. But it was the first time where I came off a show and it was just, you're trying to deal with that. And then there was a lot of things happening, a lot of stress at the point at the same time. And it was almost like, okay, all the odds right now is against it. It's telling you, what, maybe this is time where you have to shut it down. Mm-hmm. So, and I think we got to a point towards the beginning of the peak week. And we just kind of like, I kind of looked at it and I was like, I've never quit and pulled out of a show in my life. Mm-hmm. Every show I've ever said I was going to do, I stuck it all the way out. And I was like, I'll be damn near crazy if this is going to be the one I actually say, okay, especially here in the UK in front of home fan. It's going to be one where I'm going to be like, nah, I'm going to pull out. So I was like, look, at this point, my missus started coaching me. And I was like, look, you know me. You've seen me from day one to this point. You've seen every prep. You've seen everything I've gone through. Look, do you think I can do it? And can you make it happen? And, she at that point, she was like, okay, you know what? I know what to do. Let's see what we can get. First and foremost, let's get you back able to train. Let's get you back to a point where you look healthy. And then from that point, we can then dry you out and bring you into the show. So, she kind of just got me drinking lots of fluids and trying to nurse my body back to this point. And at the same time, we're at the point where we're doing peak week as well. And, I really didn't know if we were going to make it, but I think it got to like Wednesday before the show and we were looking at my physique and we were like, okay, now it looks like your body is now getting back to something. The water is not coming out. You're now looking tighter and tighter and tighter. And it was literally, I remember we were driving out to Birmingham for the actual show. And every day we looked at it, things were just kind of just pulling in together. And, we got to the point where she was just like, you know what? I think you're fine at this point. Let's just get you on stage. And, we kind of come out in the best look we've ever had because of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Was it difficult? I mean, obviously he placed first again. Was it difficult, or were you happy that the fact that you actually came through with doing the show?
It's always difficult, man. You're going up against Hadi Choopan, man. It's like, dude, this is one of the most formidable opponents you can ever be on a bodybuilding stage against, and you have to be on your A game. You cannot You cannot just like, okay, I'm just going to tiptoe into a show. I'm going to be happy
Right.
to be here and stand next to someone like Hadi. You have to be on your A game. So going into a second battle with him, it was almost like, you know what? You have to be sharp. You have to be
A
able to battle. You
rematch.
have to be
Rematch.
on. You have to do a rematch, you know? And for me, I was just like, you know what? I would love to be able to not just be in shape, I would love to be able to close the gap a little bit. So I know that will sort of be a good point for us to stand there and say, okay, right, and give us an idea exactly how much work we have to do before the next Olympia. But at least be able to close the gap enough so you can be like, okay, I see where he beats me, and I got to see where I got to improve on. And you know, for the Arnold UK, it felt like a big opener to that, where it's like, oh, okay, I see now that even with the stakes as they are and everything as they are, I've seen where our improvement has come into play and where we're at now, what we need to improve on going forward.
Definitely. What is your strategy this year? Because I mean, all the experts, right? Like I'm not an expert, but people that are experts, they say Samson can definitely beat Hadi. You know what I mean? Everybody's saying it. Like something like obviously the Arnold UK, you were sick and things went wrong, but like how do you defeat him? What is your strategy?
I think this one we just, you know, we've been improving constantly,
Mhm.
consistently. I mean, look, this is the thing is people don't ever look back. If you look at Arnold, the Olympia 2022, where we stood on stage with Hadi and Derek in the first call out, the gap wasn't even close. He wasn't even like, dude, it was like two different words, you know, level of muscularity conditioning. It wasn't even like in the same stratosphere. This was like, damn, okay, shit, we get that.
Right.
And then you come in from that Olympia, then you go into the Arnold, and then all of a sudden we're bridging the gap. And then you come into another Olympia, and all of a sudden you're in a three-man call out with Hadi and Derek. All of, you know, that gap gets
Yeah.
smaller
See what you're
every
saying.
time we get on stage. And it keeps getting smaller. And then we come into the Arnold UK, all of a sudden you're in a point where you're being divided by points. At this
Right.
point, it's so much closer, and everybody's like, ooh, it could have gone either way. It's tight. So that gap gets closer every time we're doing. So I know what we're doing, so we're already on the right track with what we're doing. It's taking time, it's taking, you know, to get that solved. Because not just idea of putting on muscle, because we've been able to put on muscle over the years, but to have that muscle maturity and have that muscle become more dense and more hard and have that maturity to sort of bring that detail, it takes time. And I've always been patient enough. Right from when I started the point, I've always been patient and always been taught the idea that your physique will come into play when it's ready to come into play. You trying to rush it and you trying to do crazy and trying to do everything to try to rush to get there and feel that pressure of people trying to get you to get there now isn't going to help. It's literally you're going to have to work this at your time. And when it's ready, it'll be ready. But if you rush it, you're going to end up hurting yourself. You're going to end up damaging something. You're going to end up having a very, very short career because of it. And you're going to be end up frustrated with yourself. So where everybody's kind of like, man, come on, man, we just want to see. We just want to see it. Dude, I've been doing this for almost 10 years now. You didn't care about 10 years ago. But the last 2 years now is concerned. So let me work in my own time because it's patience. And I have that patience. And I understand the value of that patience. And this is something I learned from watching guys like Dexter Jackson that had a really long career. Guys that have really long career. I watch them and I see what they do and how patient they were to stretch things out. And people are like, we didn't see giant progress from year to year. But I'm like, yeah, but he's right there every single time. So it's that idea of patience and being able to just buy your time, have the idea that you're not young, you know, at the same time, you're not rushing to end your career so quickly. So avoid injury, avoid doing crazy, and just slowly, you're already progressing enough to catch those guys. So just keep doing what you're doing. It's working.
What did you think about Arnold Schwarzenegger making raising the prize money for Arnold Classic to $1 million, and now becoming technically the number one prize money, the biggest, right? Like, what did you think about that move?
I was like, Ben, well, I guess I'm doing the Arnold next year then. Because honestly, it was already great because I remember the year before I won, the prize money going to that show was 200,000. And it was like, I think it was about 4 weeks or so or something, or 7 weeks out or something. They raised it 300,000. And I was like, holy crap. At that point, my name was already signed in for the show, so I was going to do it anyway. And when they raised the prize money, I was like, okay, they're really pushing the boundaries here. And then I won that. And I was like, ooh, awesome. I don't mind. I would have done it for 200 anyway. I was going to do it for 200. But it's like, hey, thank you. This is just more awesome than it is. So now to see them stepping up that and bringing bodybuilding to another level with it by doing this, it just shows that how much the sport is growing and how much bigger the sport is getting and how much, you know, now for the first time we're having shows that before where the prize money for every other show regardless, it's always been kind of like standard and the 10K
Right.
for winning.
Right.
Now it's all been, for this year, for the first time, it's all stepped up. New York Pro has got stepped up. Detroit came out. Kuwait and Dubai Pro took things up another notch, and next year they're taking it up a higher. So you're now seeing before where for a guy at a level of pro to compete and make a good living out of it used to be really difficult. And even by the time if you win a show, a pro show, the money you win is less than what you actually spent to get there. So now we've seen that stepping up, and we've seen the sport growing to the point where it's no longer the case now. Guys can actually make a good living from doing this. It's exciting. It's really exciting, and I think it will draw a lot more people to the sport. It draw a lot more attention to the sport in a good way. And knowing that this is something that's possible, it's glad to see the Arnold leading the way in that, and it means a lot. It means a lot for the athletes, especially.
Social media is almost a necessity these days.
This is my last year competing. I ain't gonna do it again.
If you become a pro right now, doesn't mean you get money.
It's worth every single minute of that.
Sam Sulek, a new sensation.
No, they want to see you, so be you.